Any Apache pilot alive? After the ambush, the quiet woman raised her hand. On United War, some heroes don't need to speak to be heard. This is the story of a quiet woman who entered a scene of chaos and changed everything. When a colonel looked across a battlefield littered with wreckage and asked, "Any Apache pilot alive?" no one expected an answer, until she raised her hand. The desert stretched endlessly, waves of heat rising from the sand, the smell of smoke and gunfire still lingering in the air. A U.S. military convoy had been ambushed earlier that morning. Dust, debris, and the echo of chaos filled the valley. Colonel James Hawthorne, a battle-hardened officer with decades of combat experience, surveyed the aftermath from the ridge. His face was set, his eyes scanning the broken remnants of what had been a coordinated strike. Helicopter wreckage, twisted metal, and the smell of burnt fuel painted a grim scene. He turned toward the scattered ground troops, their faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion. "Any Apache pilot alive?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command. A silence fell. Men shifted nervously. Some shook their heads, others muttered prayers under their breath. The hum of the nearby generators and the distant echo of artillery could not mask the tension. Among the troops was a figure who stood out only in her stillness. Lieutenant Rachel Pierce, a quiet and unassuming woman, had been assigned as a co-pilot and reconnaissance officer. She hadn't spoken much during the mission, but her presence had been steadfast. Calm in the cockpit, precise with every movement, she had earned her respect silently. Now, standing amid the chaos, Rachel lifted her hand. It was subtle, almost too quiet to notice, but it was enough. The colonel's sharp eyes caught the gesture. He squinted against the sun, trying to verify what he had just seen. "You?" he asked, incredulous. She nodded, not proudly, not boastfully, simply a firm, composed nod. A ripple of relief spread through the soldiers. Their attention shifted from despair to hope. Because in a battlefield where lives had been lost and uncertainty ruled, hope was a weapon more powerful than any rifle. Colonel Hawthorne motioned for her to approach. Every step she took was measured, purposeful, radiating a quiet authority. She carried no fanfare, no exaggerated heroics, just the knowledge and skill that had kept her alive in moments others had faltered. Around them, medics rushed past with stretchers, soldiers checked their weapons, and the smoke from the ambush swirled across the sand. But amidst all that, a single hand raised quietly had shifted the balance of the room. This was no ordinary soldier. This was someone who had faced death, chaos, and fire, and emerged not just alive, but composed, ready, and unshakable. The colonel's gaze softened slightly, a mixture of relief and respect crossing his face. "Looks like we've got one Apache pilot left," he muttered. And in that moment, everyone knew survival was more than luck. It was skill, courage, and quiet determination. The desert air was thick with smoke and the faint stench of fuel. Soldiers moved quickly, securing the perimeter, while medics worked frantically to tend to the wounded. Yet amidst all this chaos, Rachel Pierce remained calm. Every movement she made was deliberate, calculated, as if the battlefield obeyed her presence. Colonel Hawthorne watched her closely. "We need a reconnaissance sweep," he ordered, his tone clipped but steady. "Coordinates north, danger zones marked. You're up, Lieutenant." Rachel nodded. She didn't hesitate. With a practiced fluidity, she climbed into the nearest operational helicopter, her hands moving over controls with precision born of countless hours of training. The wind whipped her hair, dust stinging her eyes, but her focus never wavered. The troops on the ground watched silently as the helicopter's rotors churned the dust into a cloud. Rachel guided the aircraft over the debris of the ambush, scanning for survivors, enemy positions, and anything that might threaten the remaining units. Every instrument she monitored, every command she gave was perfect. Back on the ground, the colonel gathered his remaining pilots and medics. "Keep your eyes on her. If anyone can pull this off, it's her." Minutes passed like hours. The air was tense. Then faintly in the distance, the unmistakable glow of a downed vehicle caught Rachel's attention. She radioed coordinates with crisp clarity. "Team, northwest perimeter,
2 enemy squads in a choke point, casualties may be trapped inside the wreckage. The medics exchanged glances. Rescue in that zone was dangerous. Enemy snipers had already targeted ground teams, but Rachel's voice didn't waver. Her calm authority inspired confidence. Colonel Hawthorne spoke into the radio, directing a small team to follow her guidance. Move fast, trust her assessment. The helicopter descended carefully, Rachel's hands steady as she maneuvered into a position that minimized exposure. The team could see her eyes scanning every angle, every crevice, every shadow. She wasn't just flying, they were following a strategist who had mapped the battlefield mentally before a single round was fired. A sudden flash of movement, a sniper, but Rachel was ready. She issued rapid-fire instructions to the troops below. Suppress left, move wounded to cover, maintain perimeter. The soldiers obeyed instantly, every movement precise, every movement synchronized. The chaos of the ambush was beginning to give way to structure because of her. Colonel Hawthorne exhaled, a rare sign of admiration crossing his face. "Quiet, confident, and deadly accurate," he muttered. "That's why she's still standing." From the wreckage, a survivor waved. Rachel adjusted her approach and directed the medics carefully. One by one, the wounded were evacuated. Not a single mistake, not a single hesitation. And all around, the soldiers, those who had doubted, those who had feared the worst, began to realize something crucial. In the heart of chaos, courage doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to act.
The sun had climbed higher, casting long, harsh shadows across the scarred battlefield. Smoke curled from wrecked vehicles, and the distant sound of gunfire still echoed over the desert. Even seasoned soldiers felt the tension tightening like a vice. Rachel Pierce hovered above in the Apache, scanning every inch of the terrain. Her calm voice came through the comms. Enemy movement detected. 3 o'clock, ridgeline. Likely flank attempt. Team, prepare suppression fire. Colonel Hawthorne's hand tightened around the radio. "Good eyes, Lieutenant. How bad is it?" "Moderate threat," she replied, voice even. "They're trying to draw attention from the northwest wreckage. I'll cover medvac extraction." The medics and ground teams moved into position. Every step was precise. Every order from Rachel flowed like clockwork. Soldiers who had moments ago doubted the quiet woman now hung on her every instruction. She wasn't loud, but she radiated authority. Suddenly, a missile streaked across the sky, narrowly missing the helicopter. The rotor shuddered under the blast wave. Rachel's hands never faltered. She adjusted altitude, banked sharply, and called out, "Sniper fire from the ridge, suppressive rounds now." On the ground, soldiers dove behind cover as rounds impacted nearby rocks and sand. Rachel's precision allowed the medics to reach the wounded safely. She coordinated evacuation routes, constantly updating positions, correcting angles, and guiding pilots who had never operated under this level of chaos. Colonel Hawthorne watched, incredulous. "I've seen pilots panic under fire," he muttered to himself. "She's unshakable." Minutes passed, but to those on the ground, it felt like an eternity. The ambush was relentless. Enemy combatants tried to outmaneuver the team, but Rachel's calculated assessments kept every move countered. Then came the moment that would cement her legend. A second helicopter carrying reinforcements was hit mid-flight. The craft veered off course, smoke trailing, alarms blaring. Rachel didn't hesitate. She called out, "Emergency landing coordinates, West Ridge. Ground teams, clear path. I'll guide them in." With flawless timing, the downed helicopter landed safely. Casualties were extracted, and no one was lost. Soldiers on the ground whispered in awe. Even hardened veterans were struck silent, realizing that Rachel's calm decisiveness had prevented catastrophe. Colonel Hawthorne stepped back from his radio, his gaze fixed on her in disbelief. "Quiet, but she's saved every life so far. That woman isn't just a pilot, she's the backbone of this operation." Above all, Rachel never faltered. No heroics, no boasting, just meticulous skill, unwavering focus, and courage that spoke louder than any words could. And in that tense desert, every soldier understood. She wasn't merely surviving the ambush, She was controlling it. The battlefield had quieted, but only just. Smoke rose in thin spirals, and the sun reflected off twisted metal and scorched sand. Soldiers moved cautiously, scanning the horizon for any remaining threats. The ambush had tested everyone, but only one person had remained perfectly composed throughout: Rachel Pierce. Her Apache hovered steadily, rotors slicing through the haze as she guided the remaining ground teams toward safe zones. Each instruction was precise, every command timed to perfection. The soldiers followed her lead without hesitation. They trusted her implicitly. Colonel Hawthorne stepped forward, finally walking closer to the helicopter. His face, usually a mask of discipline, now held a mixture of awe and relief. "Lieutenant Pierce," he said, voice carrying over the desert wind, "you just turned chaos into order." Rachel landed the helicopter near the cleared perimeter, guiding medics and troops safely to solid ground. Exhaustion showed faintly in her posture, but her expression remained calm. She didn't seek praise, didn't boast, she simply completed her mission. The colonel approached, glancing at the downed helicopters, the rescued soldiers, and the disciplined formations now moving under her direction. Most pilots would have panicked under fire. Some would have made mistakes costing lives. But you, he paused, letting the words settle, you made every second count. You're steady where others falter. Around them, the soldiers and medics watched in silence. The battlefield, which had moments ago been chaos incarnate, now felt almost serene, a testament to the quiet authority of a single woman in command. Rachel steps down from the helicopter. Dust swirled around her boots, her uniform streaked with grime and smoke. The colonel saluted her, a simple gesture he reserved for moments of extraordinary respect. Without hesitation, she returned it. The simple exchange spoke louder than any medal or commendation ever could. The troops erupted in quiet applause, heads turning in admiration, understanding for the first time that heroism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's the silent, steadfast presence that saves lives and earns respect. Colonel Hawthorne lowered his hand, eyes meeting hers. "Any Apache pilot alive?" he had asked. The answer wasn't just a raised hand. It was a demonstration of courage, skill, and leadership under fire. And now, everyone on that battlefield knew Rachel Pierce wasn't merely a survivor. She was a force.